Hello again, Cheeky Monkeys, and welcome back to another episode of Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. With me, as always, this epic quest of awesomeness is our resident anime goddess, the Cat. Cat, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Yes.
Alrighty. Get yourself all settled in from your move?
Not quite, but I got internet, and that's really all that's important.
Alright. And also joining us after a couple of weeks' absence is our other co-host, Skyblaze. Skyblaze, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I went to the Alton Towers theme park and enjoyed my wedding anniversary, and in a couple of weeks I'm going on holiday, so it's all good. Yay!
Yay! Alright, cool. Sounds good. And in our correspondence corner, Brian, you're looking a little lonely again.
Hello, just me.
You've also been hitting the snack table pretty hard, I see.
What the hell is this? Okay, you did this like, oh, he's getting kind of big now, and now I'm hitting the snack. I'm working out, you asshole. Doing my DDP yoga. Fuck you.
And apparently killing yourself at it from everything I'm seeing.
Yes, but that means I'm just going to be more healthy in the future. That's how it works, right? You kill yourself to become more healthy.
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
For a given value of healthy. But anyway, we got a great show for you guys tonight. Tonight we're discussing Godzilla, the return of the King of the Monsters after a lengthy absence on American shores. So yeah, that's gonna be a lot of fun, and it's been a very divisive film so far. Everything I've read online, people are either loving it or hating it. There's not a whole lot of middle ground. You guys seen that?
Yeah, I noticed that over the weekend.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's definitely a water cooler discussion movie, this one. So that's going to be fun. We'll see how that rolls out. But first, as always, we have to abide by procedure, so we're going to start, as always, with Ask a Geek, and we've got some questions here. First one here is for Cat. It is from, oddly enough, another cat, but this one's spelled with a K.
Ah.
So I'm not sure if this is legit or if you're sending yourself questions again. But
look, the voices in my head don't ever write.
You don't think in little yellow boxes?
I don't, unfortunately.
Okay, all right. So she is not Deadpool. Okay.
This
all right.
is
Well,
true.
anyway,
I am not Deadpool. Unfortunately.
Right. Well, the question is, with the recent announcement that Viz is going to be redubbing the original Sailor Moon series into English, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that they should also include the original Deke dub as well as the new dub, or do you think that the old Deke dub should just wither and die?
The old Deke dub should just wither and die. And part of the reason why they'll never be able to include the original dub is because Deke only got part of the series. And so what Deke released was maybe 2 seasons, maybe 3 that were dubbed by them, and then later seasons were actually dubbed by different companies, and so they changed actors quite a bit. And honestly, the dub is horrible. And anybody who disagrees, that's fair, but this is a dub that was... We'll say it. It was bastardized from its original form to fit American television standards. So they changed all the names to English-ish names, and they changed a lot of the content to be more Americanized. And if you really want to watch Sailor Moon, when you watch that version, you're not getting the full story every time. But again, the biggest problem is that too many companies were responsible for dubbing it. So
too many cooks spoiled the soup.
Well, too much of something spoiled that soup, that's for sure.
The change that really baffled me was when they changed like the Prince of the Earth thing. In the original, his name was Endymion, which is a mythology thing, and they said, yes. Oh, it's Prince Darien. That's his name now. No. What?
What? The nice thing about the name Darien Shields is that it really is, like, etymology speaking, makes sense for what Chiba Mamoru means, Like, the origins of these names and what they mean and everything are pretty similar, so they actually thought that out well, but then they didn't change his, like, past life name, and that literally makes no sense. It makes almost as much sense as when they gave all of the quote-unquote outer senshi English names except Hotaru. They kept her name Hotaru, and I just can't figure out why. They kept one random Japanese name that makes no sense. Anyway, the point here is that Viz is gonna do awesome with a redub, and that you can still find the old dubs somewhere. You know. If
they're on
money.
YouTube.
Yeah, they're all on YouTube, and not that I recommend you go find something that's pirated like that, but honestly, if anybody cared about making money off of that, they wouldn't allow it on YouTube. So, yeah. It's out there if you want it, but it's not going to happen on DVD.
Okay, question for Brian comes from Charles, and he asks, who is the superhero with the most worthless power in your eyes?
Oh my goodness, there are so many.
I'm laying my bet now. Even money says it's gonna be an X-Men character.
Well, there's the X-Men character of Beak, but the thing with Beak though is because he was created by Grant Morrison, is that he was specifically created that, hey, not every mutant's going to be having really cool powers. This guy's a mutant. His name is Beak. He looks like a bird. Ta-da! But that was the reason he existed, is that not everyone's going to get these really awesome like laser eyes and healing factor powers. But he's unfortunately pretty useless. Another useless character is actually from Legion of Superheroes, I think his name was Calamity Kid, to which his power, I shit you not, was that just by standing around, stuff would go wrong. Which is not really a power, just really bad luck.
So he's like Domino, but in reverse.
Absolute reverse. He will I'm going to stand in this room, and it collapses. Awesome. Like that was his powers basically.
I'll tell you the dumbest one I ever saw. It was an obscure character. I think his name was Firepower, and his ability was he could turn anything that he picked up into a gun. And there's the image that most cements this in my mind is a cover of one of his books. He's holding a sledgehammer, he's pointing the head out into the air, and like machine gun bullets are being shot out of the head of the hammer.
So it doesn't transform into a gun. The actual object just becomes a gun?
Just becomes a gun.
Man, I love this apple. God damn it.
So what if you're like eating an apple and you're putting it in your mouth and it becomes a gun and you shoot yourself in the head?
That's just terrible.
Man, screw that. Man, screw that. I want to know what happens when he has Slappy Happy Fun Time.
Yeah.
How many holes does he have in his ceiling?
So, wait a minute. What happens if he just has a gun? Does it become a double gun?
A bigger, better gun?
Is it Gunception?
Gun that shoots guns?
That'd be great! It would be so terrible because then you'd just be firing guns at your enemy and your enemy would all of a sudden just have a bunch of guns.
It would be Gunception. Okay. Alright.
I need to go and have a lie down now.
Tom, I swear to God, if you cut that out of the show, I will kill you. Alrighty. Okay, next question here is for all of us. And it is from Ray. And he asks, if you could live in one 1980s movie, which one would it be? So, Brian, let's start with you on this one.
I feel like everyone's just going to say Ghostbusters. Because that's kind of where I would go. It seems mostly normal, except you have ghosts, but you also have the Ghostbusters, so that's kind of cool.
Okay, Kat, what about you?
too hard. There's so many. Star Wars. Several Star Wars movies were released in the 80s, were they not?
One was Return of the Jedi.
Empire Strikes Back, 1980?
Was it 1980? Oh, no, you are correct. It was 1980.
Two out of the three originals, so I'm going to say Star Wars.
I stand corrected then. Okay, all right. Skyblaze, what about you?
On the grounds that Cat's got away with that, I'm really tempted to stay Star Trek since, you know, a whole bunch of the movies were in the 80s. But what I'm actually going to say is Back to the Future. Because A, time machine, and B, the ability to hang out with Doc Brown was fucking awesome.
Yes.
Okay. I tell you what, I wouldn't mind living in a Fantasia from the Never-Ending Story. But I would be staying as far the fuck away from the bog of sadness as I could.
Would you also be staying quite far away from the Gamork? You know, the huge fucking wolf bear thing with the terrifying eyes.
Yeah.
God,
yeah.
that was so scary when I was a kid. Like, really, legitimately, I couldn't
I
watch
know,
that part.
right? I know.
Speaking of things that give us nightmares as children, his next question, also addressed to all of us, is what is something that gave you nightmares as a kid that, looking back now, you feel kind of foolish about?
Ooh, I got this. When I was a kid, E.T. scared the shit out of me.
Really?
Yeah, there was something about, we were watching it, like, with all the other kids on base, wherever we were stationed at the time, and all of the kids who watched it were terrified of E.T. And I know now that that's not really something to be scared of, and E.T.'s a good alien, but it was like, I don't know what it was. E.T. scared the crap out of me as a kid. I watched Gremlins as like a 5-year-old and was less scared of Gremlins than I was of E.T.
Was his voice when he shouted that scared you? That wah noise he made?
No, I don't know what it was. Because I was like 4 and I don't remember it. But I just remember being scared my whole life of E.T.
Okay, Brian, what about you?
Does anyone remember the really cheesy movie Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
I think we like. Oddly enough, I've never seen it.
It came out like 1988, 89, something like that. So I was really young when I saw it. And it just scared the bejesus out of me. I didn't like clowns that much to begin with, but this movie just solidified that.
Are there people who do like clowns? Because if so, what is wrong with them?
There are, but most of them are safely.
Does.
There are people who like clowns, but most of them are safely locked up in mental institutions, or they are, in fact, clowns themselves.
Or they are Linkara.
Or they are Linkara.
But yeah, like I had some terrible nightmares after I watched that film. But then it wasn't recently, but I remember a couple years ago, my friends were like, "Let's watch this movie." I'm like, Then I watched it, like, this movie's dumb.
Still won't go anywhere near it, will you, though?
Well, see, it's also Stephen King, so it's always like a coin toss. Like, he's either going to really creep me out or just piss me off.
Okay. All right, Skyblaze, what about you?
I'm trying to remember some, because I was actually pretty difficult to scare when I was a child, apparently. Because I'd, like, watch, like, my parents would watch horror films and stuff, and I'd be like, meh. And then get bored and go and play with my crayons or something. The only one I can think of, which is kind of stupid, is the episode of Doctor Who with the Candyman, Happiness Patrol. And I remember that thing scaring me because I was like, "Oh my god, Bertie Bassett has become evil."
I haven't seen that one. That was the one where they were lampooning Margaret Thatcher, wasn't it?
Yes, not that I understood that when I was 6, but yeah.
But I'm sure your parents thought it hilarious.
I'm sure my parents and my grandparents thought it was absolutely fucking hilarious because we live in the north. But yeah, I remember that thing scaring me, and watching it now, it's like, that's just fucking hilarious. What in the shit? Okay,
well, let's see. I'm going to, I'm trying to think of something that really flipped me out that I'm kind of... Okay, I know the perfect example. I mentioned this actually in our first Halloween episode when Kabo was on the show, but I think it was Superman 4. I think it was the one with Richard Pryor. Was that 4 or was that 3?
I want to say that was 3, because 4 is Quest for Peace, and that's where he takes all the weapons and throws them in the sun.
Yeah, it was whichever one had Richard Pryor in it. There's a scene near the end of the movie where Superman confronts the big bads, and they have this. The whole fight is centered around this supercomputer, and then for reasons that have not been adequately explained to me to this day, at one point somehow the computer grabs the one of the women villains, pulls her into its system, and then converts her into a cyborg. And you watch this happen, and you look at it now and it's like, oh, they're just painting her face gray, giving her contacts, and gluing little plastic bits that look like metal over her face and hands. But when I was a child, this fucking scared the hell out of me. And yeah, I saw that shit in my nightmares for weeks after seeing that movie. But nowadays, look at it, it's like, geez, what the hell was I so scared of? But it's on YouTube. Look it up, and yeah, see what it does for you. So let's see. Next question here. This one is for me, and it's from Jack. And he asks what my qualifications for a great video game console are. And I think I'll actually open this up to Skyblaze and Brian if he wants to answer, since I think as gamers we can all weigh in on this. For me, what makes a console great, and what is why it's the same reason why I say the Super Nintendo is the greatest console ever made, is how memorable, how many of the games are on that console are memorable to me. And like I said, the Super Nintendo in our Ask the Audience show, I said the Super Nintendo was the greatest console ever made. That's because that one has the most games on it that I remember fondly. A Link to the Past, Final Fantasy II, Final Fantasy III, Mario World, Yoshi's Island, Maui Mauer, the Donkey Kong Country trilogy, Super Metroid, Chrono Trigger. The list goes on and on. There were so many awesome, amazing games on that system that I remember like the back of my hand. Whereas if you were to ask me to name, say, for example, a PS2 game, a list of PS2 games that I would say were must-haves. And bear in mind, this is coming from a guy who's got like 80 PS2 games in his collection. The only ones I can really point to that I would say are must-haves would be like Final Fantasy X, Metal Gear Solid 3, maybe if push came to shove, one of the Ratchet and Clank games. But I mean, they're just, I don't know, the memorability of the Super Nintendo games is really what made the system the best in my eyes. And really, that's how I rank my game consoles. How many games did this console have that I still look back on exceptionally fondly? Skyblaze, what about you? What makes the console memorable in your mind?
Well, I can see where you're coming from with the whole, like, how many games were good on it. I don't know if that's necessarily a reflection of the console itself as much as the marketing and third-party support. What I would say makes a good console, as opposed to a good stable of games, is the ability to challenge the accepted paradigm of what a console is, and open it up to new people, new ideas, and do new things with it, and do things that are actually useful and not a gimmick. I'm a huge fan of the Dreamcast, which had the idea of online support and playing games with consoles online. Completely baffling at the time. It was like, who would do this? One console generation later, everybody's got it. Also, things like, for all that people take the piss out of it, the Wii has introduced consoles to an entirely new segment of gamers. Things like the 3DS have introduced 3D gaming in a way that doesn't hurt your fucking brain, and you don't have to wear stupid glasses. Things like this, I think, are important aspects of what makes a good console as opposed to what makes a great console as opposed to just a really good console.
Okay, Brian, what about you?
I like all your guys' answers, and I'm going to add one. It has to work consistently.
Yep.
That usually is number one. I know I might get a lot of Xbox guys to hate me, but listen, the 360, yeah, it has really cool games. I'm on my third console. I've never had to buy more than one console before. Like, seriously, this, you have to have it work, and it has to work consistently.
Can I ask you a question, just for clarification purposes?
Sure.
Are you using a first generation model or a slimline?
I only now just got a slimline because I had the normal first generation models for the longest period of time. My first one lasted a good while before it died, and then started the wonderful trend of trying to deal with the help, like online help, and getting a new one. To which the point I said, at one point I just said, screw this, I'll get a slimline. Apparently those last longer. Hopefully it does. You know.
Well,
so
I can speak from experience. They do.
Yeah, to make a great console.
I can actually tell you why the slimline ones work better than the original gen ones.
Cooling fans out the ass.
No. Well, sort of, but not quite. This is kind of boring, but when just before things like the original PS3 and the Xbox 360 and a whole slew of other tech products were released, there's a bunch of new regulations to do with trade that came out to do with the use of lead in solder, as in you couldn't fucking use it anymore. No bastard actually knew how to use lead-free solder at the time because it requires a higher temperature and a different kind of flux to make sure it adheres and solders properly. Apparently nobody bothered to tell any of the manufacturing plants in China, Malaysia, Indonesia, all that sort of place, so they didn't bother changing any of their operating procedures, which meant that all the flux that they were using didn't adhere properly to the boards and would crack under sudden temperature changes, some rapid heating and cooling. So anything that involves like rapid temperature changes up and down, so printers, plotters, fax machines, games consoles, anything like this, solder would end up cracking and the chips would literally fall out of the board. You want to know how you fix this? You strip down the board and put it in the oven.
Wait, what? That seems
seriously? No, seriously, you strip down everything off the console, take the main board, put it in the oven at about 200 degrees for about 5 minutes, and it remelts the solder.
That was one cause, and then after Microsoft went back and said that they'd fix that, and then the next thing that started happening was I don't know if it was because they were using cheap solder or what, but it would wind up just melting, and the problem
that was still the same problem. They just didn't use the proper kind of flux.
It also didn't help that the console itself was just horribly designed. The only cooling fan that was on the original console was on the one side, which if you stand the console up on end, now your cooling fan is at the bottom of the console and there's no air circulation. So that's what made me laugh when I first got the slimline console and I saw that there is, except for the front plate where the disk drive is, there is literally a cooling fan on every side of the console.
Yeah, I noticed that when I got mine too. I was like, Jesus, this is going to take off.
So, yeah, cooling fans out the ass. And, okay. And then his next question is for me, and he asked my thoughts on the Oculus Rift. Have we learned nothing from the Virtual Boy? Is history about to repeat itself here? I'm sorry, it just looks like the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen, and I'm sure more tech-savvy people are gonna start, tearing their hair out. I'm sure producer Tom is out there screaming silently at me that I'm an idiot and don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But I'm sorry, it just looks fucking retarded. It's you know what it looks like? It looks like Geordie LaForge's prototype visor. It looks like the kind of thing that they would present to LeVar Burton before he started the show, and he went, "No, I'm not fucking wearing this." So yeah, that, and I don't know, maybe it's just I'm not listening to the right sources or what, but I have not heard shit about plans for games for it. So, that's what really sells me on a game console is the fucking games. Yeah, E3 has been a very boring experience for me for the last couple of years, obviously. But I haven't heard anything about games for the Oculus Rift. So once I start hearing about how the games are being implemented, then maybe I'll change my mind. But until then, no, it's a black Virtual Boy, and it can go die in a fire. So yeah. And who is sending me a message here?
Tom is. You know that aforementioned screaming.
Oh, yeah. Producer Tom writes, what we have learned from history is don't make all shades of color hell red. Okay.
You know, the other thing that gets me about the Oculus Rift is that it sounds like a dungeon level in World of Warcraft.
You know what it reminds me of? What it makes me think of? I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who remembers this, but GameSpy.com used to run a comedy feature called The Daily Victim. And it was basically little first-person comedy stories about, gamers who've taken it to the next level. And bear in mind, this is like 15 years ago this column is running. But there's one story they did about a guy who's playing Diablo 2 on a VR headset with like Power Glove interface. And it winds up tearing, he's playing in a dungeon, but what is happening in real life is he's swinging a broomstick around and he's like breaking all of his furniture, and his wife is getting pissed at him. And it's like, I'm sorry, honey, I didn't mean to break the lamp, but I'm fighting the butcher and shit just got real. So that's what the Oculus Rift makes me think of. So anyway, that's all the Ask Geek questions that we have for this week. As always, you can send them to us through the email at billysmith@channelawesome.com. Or you can drop them in the That Guy with the Glasses forum thread of the same name. Personally, I'd prefer if you send them to us through the email. It's a little easier for us to keep track of what we've answered, what we haven't. So yeah, that's all the Ask Geek questions that we have for this week. So with that, we're going to jump right into our headlines, starting this week with Brian. So Brian, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzo. Now, a lot of my news this week is actually coming from the Diamond Retailer Summit that was held in Las Vegas over this past weekend, and I have a lot to get through, so please bear with me. So up first will be Dynamite. Dynamite Entertainment is continuing a very strong 2014 right now, and they're going to be adding a new title to it in the same form that we've been seeing a trend lately in TV shows becoming comics. This time an animated TV show in Bob's Burgers. Now, unlike some of the shows and TV and cartoons that have been coming under the comics lately, while they've been written extremely well, they don't have a lot of the new creators involved with it. Bob's Burgers is different. Writers, producers, everyone who's involved with a TV show is going to be involved with the comic itself, which is actually fairly new and actually very interesting. It's going to be due out around August, so look for that. In other Dynamite news, and very big legal Dynamite news, you may remember a story I had several years ago was talking about how Dynamite couldn't call the Princess of Mars or Tarzan comic books the Princess of Mars or Tarzan comic books because of the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate having a case against them. Well, guess what? As time has gone on, things have changed. The case of them seems to be no longer in play. The two have come together, and there's going to be a relaunch of these Edgar Rice Burroughs books with proper names like John Carter, Warlord of Mars. Though Lord of the Jungle is still not going to be called Tarzan. We're not sure why that is yet. For a while, the reasoning behind this is that the licensing and names were put together within different companies, Dark Horse and Marvel, because Marvel had just released a John Carter comic that also sort of corresponded with Disney's John Carter movie. Now, neither of those companies are longer publishing those books, which probably made this easier for them to handle. Look for a lot of the big different relaunches over the next couple of months. In Archie comic news, but not necessarily with Archie, not yet anyway, Archie is looking to bring back their Red Circle for yet a third time. First actually licensed out to DC Comics, and when that didn't go successful, they then relaunched it as a digital first with, again, mixed results. Now it looks like Archie's going to try it one more time, but this time with proper print releases, and they're going to have different characters coming back. There's going to be The Fox, which will be written by Mark Waid, and a lot of these other sort of superhero comics are coming back with a more, quote-unquote, a grown-up feel to them. The Red Circle digital comics was definitely more of an all-age comics. We'll see how, the Mighty Crusaders and things like that are now handled with this third relaunch. Also with Archie, and more of Afterlife with Archie news, Which interesting is that this book, and I gave it one of my best recommendations because it's a surprisingly good title for a very odd zombie plus Archie style to it. Well, it seems that the popularity of the book has gotten so well, there's going to be sort of a spin-off series with Sabrina the Teenage Witch. It's not going to be set in the same timeline as The Afterlife with Archie. It's actually going to be straight up a horror book, as they explain to it. Another parallel universe than the Archie universe sort of exists in. The series doesn't have any sort of time frame coming out, but they say they will launch it and it might have a die-cut cover that come with it. Ah, die cuts. Over with DC Comics, in the latest solicitations, we came to realize there's going to be a cancel of several different comics. Batwing, Birds of Prey, All-Star Western, Phantom Stranger, Pandora, and Superboy. This seems like a lot, but at the same time, every time this year, there does seem to be a big chunk of books that are getting cancelled. And a lot of these books probably just didn't have the readers or didn't have the very good reviews going for them. Personally, I'm actually a little bit sad that All-Star Western is going away. All-Star Western was actually one of the better books I felt DC was putting out right now with Jonah Hex. Jimmy Potamati and Justin Gray have done doing some amazing work with Jonah Hex and has actually been writing them for almost over 100 issues now. He might get a relaunch. I know for a fact Birds of Prey will probably be relaunched again sometime down the road like they have done with the new Suicide Squad and new Teen Titans book. Just don't know when yet. Phantom Stranger and Pandora, unfortunately, just never probably could find an audience despite the fact that they were really pushed heavily being involved in the whole universe reboot. They might be canceling those books, but they're also adding a new digital first to their already impressive digital first rosters in Sensation Comics. If you remember Sensation Comics is the book that actually debuted Wonder Woman and she was the star of for many years to follow. This digital first is a Wonder Woman comic, just named Sensation Comics. They're doing the same thing they did with Legends of the Dark Knight and Adventures of Superman. These one-and-done stories with various creators following up with them. First creator up is Gail Simone. So a lot of these stories are going to be either out of continuity or with old continuity, not necessarily with the new 52 that's going on right now. Adventures of Superman and Legends of the Dark Knight both got rave reviews critically, so we can only assume that with them being successful, Wonder Woman, it was finally her turn to get herself a digital first book. Over with Marvel, Marvel's already, I kid you not, starting to push their next big events, even though the fact Original Sin has already started. One of the new books is going to be written by Rick Remender. He's called Axis, and this is definitely a X-Men and Avengers style book and crossover. Remender is the writer of Uncanny Avengers, so it seems this is sort of an extension of the book and the storyline that follows with it. Next year, though, in May, they're already telling us about their next big event called Time Runs Out. And this will be handled by Jonathan Hickman, who's been handling the Avengers and New Avengers books for the last several months, almost the last year or so. And it's all his stories combined to come up with whatever he's going to do here. The theory is that the last several storylines that Jonathan Hickman has done has sort of been multiverse oriented. Different universes, different characters, and things like that. The teaser image that was given at the summit was that of two worlds looking to collide. So that might tell you something about it. There was also rumors about this leading up to a possible reboot, but I'm not going to take those at face value because I've actually heard these rumors several times before, and nothing's really ever come from them. They said that was probably going to happen after, I think, Avengers vs. X-Men, and it didn't. So I take that last part with a big grain of salt. In my final story, we're sort of doing 2 for 2 here. It's Marvel, but it's also Star Wars. If you do remember, Dark Horse did lose the license to Star Wars, which was very sad. What was even more sad was the news of the expanded universe sort of no longer existing. So, what does that mean for Marvel and Star Wars? Well, Marvel's publishing plan for Star Wars is going to be announced this July 2014. Anything that's probably going to come in these books is now going to be considered canon, connected to the new Star Wars movies and new Star Wars show Rebels debuting. What exactly will happen, we don't know. And who exactly is going to be writing books, we're also not sure yet either. It could be staples of Marvel's current writers, but they might actually go looking for more freelancers who've worked on Star Wars books before. I would sort of prefer the latter there, just because those people already have real good experience writing Star Wars. It would be easy to just pick up and keep moving forward and sort of figure out how this new universe is working from after the Return of the Jedi to Episode 7 and forward. Well, that's all the time I have. I'm sorry if I took up way more time than I should, but like I said, I had a lot of news to get through. So, that's it for this tour of the multiverse. Back to you, Dr. Gonzo.
Alright, our first story in the gaming world this evening. If you're thinking about buying an Xbox One or PS4, then get ready for your electricity bill to get a slight jump. A new report by the National Resource Defense Council shows that both consoles consume more than twice the power of the consoles of the previous generation. The NRDC report shows that the biggest culprit is the Xbox One's TV viewing mode, and the report says that if all Xbox One owners use the console to watch television, it would cost $300 million in yearly energy bills, and that the system does not conserve energy well, even in standby mode. And the Oculus Rift is making waves again, this time at your local Chuck E. Cheese's. The Children's Party Enterprise announced that they will be launching a 6-month trial run with Oculus hardware, starting at a location in Dallas, Texas, with other Dallas-Fort Worth locations following suit, along with locations in San Diego and Orlando. The device will be made available to parties, with Chuck E. Cheese's Ticket Blaster being the game of choice. And it looks like Legend of Zelda is getting the Dynasty Warriors treatment. Zelda Hyrule Warriors, which is being developed by Tecmo Koei, creators of the Dynasty Warriors games, is due for release in Japan this August for the Wii U. While details of the game are sketchy at the moment, fans of the Dynasty Warriors series can tell us what to expect. Lots of hacky slashy fun. More on this as it develops. And the next chapter in the Halo saga has been announced. Halo 5 Guardians is slated for a fall 2015 release date. Details beyond the title are non-existent, but with E3 right around the corner, we can expect some more tidbits headed our way. Finally, Microsoft is offering refunds on its Xbox Live Gold service. This was catalyzed by Microsoft's changes to the service, making it so that access to services like Hulu and Netflix no longer require paid Gold memberships. Once the update is sent out in June, members can receive a pro-rate refund on their unused membership time from the time of the update to the time that their membership would have expired. Not a bad way to handle things, I'd say.
Voice actor Yada Koji passed away May 1st due to chronic kidney failure. Yada was best known as General Talon in Space Battleship Yamato, Dr. Gero in Dragon Ball Z, and Zeph in One Piece. Fellow One Piece actor Inada Tetsu tweeted his sentiments in the form of Sanji's famous quote to Zeph, "I've been in your care so damn much, I'll never forget everything you've done for me." Reprising the role of Zeph in last year's One Piece episode of Mary Mohitori no Nakama no Monogatari special was one of Yada's final performances. He was 81. Sad news also in the J-Rock world. Kei, guitarist for Visual Kei band Moi Dis-moi, passed away this week. An announcement was made on the band's website stating that Kei had been found dead and his family had informed the rest of the band. While the circumstances of his passing are still unknown, it has been confirmed that Moi Dis-moi will not be performing at the Shibuya Duo Music Exchange this weekend. No announcements have been made on how this will affect their future performances. Anime voice actor and Houston drama teacher Ilich Guardiola was arrested recently on charges of sexual assault on a child. According to police, Guardiola had recently traveled to Las Vegas and married an unnamed 16-year-old student in the presence of the girl's mother. Last Thursday, he was stopped for a traffic violation and subsequently questioned about the underage girl's presence in his vehicle, and he later admitted to having a sexual relationship with her. The Houston Family Arts Center, where he taught, has since cut all ties with Guardiola. The prolific voice actor is best known for playing Sha Gojo in Gensamaden Sayuki and Harada Sanosuke in Hakuoki. Viz Media revealed ever so casually on Twitter that they have reprinted all of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure manga. Their warehouse should be filled with every volume starting sometime this month. The early volumes were printed 9 years ago and haven't been easy to get a hold of as of late. With the recent small but notable resurgence of popularity owing to new episodes of JoJo streaming online on Crunchyroll, I guess a reprinting of JJBA was finally warranted. Well, if you're a denizen of the internet and were paying attention to the Ask a Geek questions, you'll have noticed that Sailor Moon was licensed by Viz Media. Now this is the old series we're talking about, all 200 episodes, 3 movies, and numerous specials of 90s shoujo goodness. Yes, all 200 100 episodes, which means that after 18 years, Sailor Stars is finally coming to the US. The controversial season that was too risque for our pure American morals will actually finally get released. The whole series is getting a new dub along with the original Japanese audio and will start its home video release sometime in the fall. In the meantime, episodes are already being released digitally on Viz.com and Hulu, with dub episodes coming again in the fall. Viz also picked up the rights for the new Sailor Moon Crystal series, whose release details in the US are still unknown. It will stream the first and third Saturdays each month on the Nico Nico website starting July 5th. So Viz pretty much has the whole Sailor Moon franchise in the bag. We'll see how they treat our beloved series as time goes and more details are released. Doraemon is coming to Disney. Disney XD will run 26 episodes of Japan's ultimate classic series about a robot cat from the future. Alas, that with adapting Doraemon for American audiences, a few changes will be made. Nobita will be called Nobi and Gian will be called Big G. A few edits and tweaks will be made to turn yen into American dollars and some Japanese foods into Western cuisine. The show will also have some content edited to comply with American censorship standards. Normally, I'm the first person to rail against editing for TV and anything that could be called Americanization, but this is one of those cases where I think it's kind of probably okay. The audience of 6-year-olds who are going to be watching this will have an easier time following the show and relating to the characters if they're less distracted by anime tropes and cultural differences that they don't really understand. Is it good to expose children to foreign cultures young and get them used to this sort of thing? Yes, of course it is. And you're still gonna get that in the show no matter what you do. You can't eliminate all Japanese references. And remember, this series is being targeted at young children, kind of like it is in Japan. So it's not aimed at anime fans like most anime we watch. Does it suck that we have to make these kinds of edits? Yes. But when the kids watch it, it gets ratings. When it gets ratings, we stand a chance of more of it coming to the US. Doraemon is one of the greatest media franchises in Japanese history, but most people here have never even heard of it. Now we're finally bringing it over, under the production of Japanese producers, mind you, so I choose to see this as a good opportunity to give a little exposure to a well-deserved series, in the hopes that it may eventually lead to something better than an Americanized version. Anyway, that's all I've got going on in the anime and manga world. I'll kick it over to Skyblaze for some conversations.
Hello all, it's been a while, but I'm finally back with some conversations. Just a few quick ones this week so we can get back into the swing of things. First of all, we start off with a pair of Transformers conventions. The daddy of them all, BotCon, will this year be setting up in Pasadena, California from the 19th to the 22nd of June. As is standard for this event, the guest list is impressive, featuring voice actor and director Susan Blue, as well as David Kay, Jack Angel, Hal Rail, Michael McConaughey, and Transformers animated co-creator Derek J. Wyatt. Of course, there will also be convention-exclusive figures. This year, the features Decepticon Pirate figures, Ferrak, Cannonball, Scorponok, and the Cybertron Knight figures, Devcon and Jinrai. Also on the Transformers front, there's Auto Assembly in Birmingham, UK on the 8th to the 10th of August. Guests for this event include voice actors Peter Spellos, Tanzen Coleman and David Sobolov, and renowned Transformers author Jim Sorensen. There will also be a convention-exclusive lithograph print drawn by one of the artist guests, which is available only to attendees. However, if you are planning to attend this event, be aware that the room space in the main convention hotel has already sold out. Sticking with that same weekend, the 8th and the 10th of August, there's also the Nine Worlds Geek Fest in London, UK. Some of you may remember me mentioning Nine Worlds last year as the first con I was aware of that was funded entirely via Kickstarter. Well, turns out that the first event was a smashing success, spanning every possible geek-related subject from hard science subjects such as robotics and mathematics, to philosophical topics like geek feminism, as well as race and culture in the future, to just plain fun stuff like knitting. This year I'll also be appearing as a guest for the part of the convention's podcast mini-track, so I hope to see you there. Speaking of big conventions in London, there's also LunCon on the 14th to the 18th of August at the Excel Centre. This is the 72nd World Science Fiction Convention, also known as Worldcon, so it is a pretty big deal, especially considering that it's in London for the first time in about 10 years. The Hugo Awards will be presented there, and the guest list also includes names like writer Robin Hobb and artist Brian Talbot. Other famous names in science, sci-fi and fantasy also appearing on panels or just hanging out at the con. People like Cory Doctorow, Ross Caveney, Christopher Priest, Charles Stross, Paul Cornell, and even George R.R. Martin have announced that they'll be attending. Finally, in my humble hometown of Sheffield on the 30th to the 31st of August, there is the Sheffield Film and Comic Con being held at Sheffield Arena. Confirmed guests include Kristanna Loken, Bonnie Langford, Dirk Benedict, Virginia Hay, Sylvester McCoy, Louise Jameson, Sophie Aldred and Paul McGann, as well as others. Needless to say, I will be there, possibly in cosplay. Once again, I hope to see you there. Feel free to come up and say hi. Right, that's all from me for now. Back to you, Gonzo.
But that's all the headlines that we have for this week. We're going to take a quick musical break. When we talk back, Godzilla. Is the king of the monsters have a purposeful grimace and a terrible roar, or should he just go, go, go? And, yeah, I realize Blue Oyster Cult fans are now going to kick the shit out of me in the streets. But, hey, I regret nothing. Stay tuned. We got a lot of fun stuff ahead. And we are back, and this last week saw the return of the King of the Monsters, Godzilla, to American cinemas after a somewhat lengthy absence. So it's a very highly anticipated film, also a very divisive film. I'm not seeing a whole lot of middle ground on the reviews here. People are either loving it and proclaiming it as the greatest thing since, well, sliced bread, and people who are thinking that this film has actually done the impossible and made the Matthew Broderick Godzilla film look good by comparison. So, yeah, me, Brian, and Kat here have all seen the film, and we will be taking the film apart and discussing its merits and its flaws and deciding just what we think of the film. So, Brian, why don't you get us started?
who have you been talking to that says this movie makes the Matthew Broderick one better? I want to meet these people. Because I feel like that's a mass exaggeration, and they're lying.
I would love to introduce you, but unfortunately the severity of their statements has meant that they had to go into witness protection.
Okay, well, the overall thoughts for me was that I was a little bit nervous when the film was announced and kind of came through, but it sort of shocked me, and I did sort of enjoy it more than I thought I was going to. Now, again, when I saw it, I had gone to my first real film festival here at Texas Toku Tyson. Gonna name drop them. There you go, guys. Hopefully you can give me some check in the mail. All right. But before I saw it, I saw 4 other films right before it with a bunch of people who were all really excited. So once sort of the film started to get going, I was in a very rowdy theater, so lots of yelling, lots of screaming, lots of lots of talking and things like that, which is not usually allowed, but we kind of let it slide because we're all sort of excited.
Kat, what about you? What were your general thoughts on the film?
I too was quite nervous about this film, but most of the reviews that I saw on, popping up in my Facebook feed were all really positive. So I went into it with, anticipating a good film, and I guess it was okay. I really, really liked the effects, and that's really all that I liked.
See, I'm kind of in the same boat. I think I kind of shot myself in the foot on this one because I psyched myself up for this film by watching the original 1954 Godzilla beforehand, and not a lot of people realize or remember this, but the original Godzilla was a dark fucking film. It was a straight up horror picture. Godzilla was not the nice guy, savior of humanity and friend to all children, although technically that's Gamera, that he has been in pretty much every film since then. Here, he was just, in the original Godzilla, he was just there to wreck shit up. I mean, we're talking like picking up trains and gnawing on them while people are falling out of the cars. It was just a dark fucking film. And all of the press that I've read about this movie said, "Oh, this is gonna, that's what they were going back to." They're like, "Oh, we're taking Godzilla back to his roots." Then I go and I see the film, and he's fighting 2 other mutants, and he's the savior of humanity. I'm like, "No, we're not at the roots. We're only at the lower undergrowth. Dig deeper, dig deeper." So, I mean, I don't know. I'm still trying to decide my thoughts on this film, and maybe they'll crystallize as we discuss the film and its component pieces. Starting, as always, with the plot of the film. So, Brian, why don't you give us a brief synopsis of the plot, such as it is?
Okay, well, I'll try to give you the quick Cliff Notes version if I can. But what the plot is that Bryan Cranston's character was at one time working in Japan with his family at one of their nuclear power plants, and there was a disaster which killed his wife and shut down the plant. But he believed it wasn't just a meltdown or something. He believed there was something more going on. So in the 15 years that we don't really see, because there's this time skip, he kind of goes a little bit conspiracy theory and tries to figure out exactly what's going on and what's being hidden. Turns out he was right. That what attacked the plant was a monster. They called him a Muto, which was an acronym. Muto. And what happened was it attacked the plant because it feeds off of radiation. So it was hungry. It woke up. It was hungry and ate the plant. So they were there. Other scientists came in there trying to study it. And as any sort of monster movie, the monster escapes. Oh shit! So the first one escapes, and this is where things sort of start picking up because when it escapes. That is when Godzilla shows up, but in a twist of the film, not only does Godzilla show up, the second Muto, which they thought was dormant, also wakes up, and it wakes up over in the desert of Nevada.
And it is horny!
Yeah, and they've been trying to talk to each other, so they're trying to meet, and eventually they're going to meet in San Francisco. So the major plot is... oh shit, there's monsters. Oh shit, there's Godzilla. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And then, like I said, there's a real big Cliff Notes. I'm not sure if this was in the script. Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit! But the whole like major plot line is they're trying to stop the Mutos, and they're trying to stop Godzilla, but Godzilla they're kind of really confused because there's Dr. Ishiro Shirazawa, played by Ken Watanabe, is trying to explain to them is that no, this guy's been around for a while. He's here to sort of restore balance. We should let him go and kill these things because that is sort of the correct thing to do. So the eventual plot is that all three monsters end up in San Francisco. There's a monster mash, and spoilers, eventually Godzilla wins. That was like the fastest synopsis we've ever gone through on this show.
Well, you left out the luckiest soldier to ever live.
I thought I'd get into the luckiest and unluckiest soldier in the face of the planet when we got to these characters. Because Ford Brody, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who's one of the characters you eventually follow around, he starts out because he's the son of Bryan Cranston's character, and he's grown up to be a bomb disposal guy in the Navy.
Explosive ordnance disposal is his job description. And excuse me, he was Army.
No,
I thought he was Navy.
He was Navy.
He was Navy?
Yeah, I thought he said Navy. In the Navy.
He definitely wore uniforms that said Navy on them.
Did he? Oh, well, he was so boring I hardly paid any attention to him, but that's a gripe for later in the show.
Yeah, but we follow him because he goes with his father to find the Muto. The Muto escapes, and starts wrecking shit and heads towards San Francisco. First heads to Hawaii. So somehow he gets on a chopper, lands in Hawaii so he can go home to San Francisco, and the Muto attacks the airport, but also Godzilla attacks, and he survives this attack, and he gets on a plane to go to San Francisco, but then the plane has to be diverted to the desert because the Navy came up with a plan to try to stop the Mutos, and since they eat radiation, like that's their diet, they were going to transport nukes across country as bait to get them out to the sea and then blow them up.
Because that worked so well the first time.
Yeah, I was like, this is a terrible plan, guys.
This cannot possibly fail.
Well, I think that takes us to our next component of the film, which is the script of this film, and I'm gonna jump off from that point about the idea of trying to blow up Godzilla with megaton nukes. We've already established early in the film that these guys feed off of radiation. So am I the only one who thinks that trying to blow them up with even bigger bombs is the equivalent of shoving a chocolate cake down a fat kid's throat?
Well, I think Ken Watanabe thought of that, but I think he was the only one.
Ken Watanabe was like, this is dumb. We've done this before. Yeah, I think we've done this before. Didn't you see the film I just put up? Didn't work. He's still here. His plan was like, just let them kill each other and try to get out of the way. Like, that was his plan.
Well, what did you guys think of the script overall?
It was kind of convoluted. Like, it was way more complicated than this movie really needed to be. This movie is it's like Transformers. We just want to watch the robots beat each other up. You don't have to create a complex storyline to go with it. It doesn't have to be insanely complicated. Just, lead us to the point that we want to see and let us have that. As long as it's good, we'll be happy. And this was like, hey, let's come up with unnecessarily complicated stuff to get us to the point where we're watching monsters fight. And there was so much lead up to it that it was just like, I don't know, man. It was just kind of...
Definitely a very slow-burning film.
Yeah.
To its detriment, I felt. See, and again, this goes back to my expecting... OG Godzilla. I really felt like that the film would have been better served if they'd removed the Mutos and made Godzilla the actual, I don't know if you could really call him a villain because he's an animal, but the antagonist of the piece. Because the whole thing about Godzilla in the original film was he was supposed to be a natural disaster. He was supposed to be a force of nature. He was supposed to be a lesson of man's hubris, in developing, nuclear weaponry and trying to harness atomic energy. And they touch on that briefly in the film when Dr. Serizawa, Ken Watanabe's character says, the folly of man is thinking that he is in control of nature when it's the other way around. That's really the only time that they really touch on that. Which I really feel like Ken Watanabe was very poorly served in this film, because I really felt, he's an amazing actor, but I felt like that his only purpose in this film was to be there and be wise and Japanese.
Yes.
I was like,
it is sort of this weird thing with Godzilla films that the human element can either be an addition to it or a detriment to the films, and it kind of varies film to film. My complaint about the script was definitely like the sort of the military plan that sort of came into fruition, because it was, well, we need to get monster A to monster point like A or to B, but the monsters are going to meet anyway, so adding sort of another way of baiting them is a padding effect. It was just them padding. And the fact that when they first did it on the train, and the Muto attacked the train and destroyed the train and killed everyone except for Ford Brody, because he's the luckiest soldier in the fucking world, should have been like, hey, this isn't working. this should have been our red flag moment of, let us not continue this storyline. But then they're like, no, we're going to pick it up and we're going to try again. I was like, this is not going to end well.
And see, the thing is like, before people think that, oh, well, you just want to see Godzilla smash things. No, you can do good human-centered stories in a Godzilla film. The original film did it superbly with same character's name, Dr. Serizawa, who, at least I might be confusing my characters here, but one of the central characters of the original film is a scientist who's created this device that can destroy oxygen, which you can't really do because science, but that's neither here nor there, Really, if you can wrap your head around a 300-foot tall dinosaur rampaging through Tokyo, an oxygen destruction device should be kind of small potatoes. But anyway, he knows that it could kill Godzilla, but he's scared that he doesn't want it to be unleashed upon the world as a weapon. He doesn't want it to be weaponized, and he's wrestling with this moral dilemma that, okay, he has a device that can kill Godzilla. He can save humanity, but his creation will probably wind up as a super weapon and kill even more people. Or he could just sit back and not use it, and then Godzilla winds up killing a whole bunch of people, and that blood is on his hands because he could have stopped it. And it was a very well done piece of human drama, and I was really disappointed that there wasn't something like that in this film. So it is possible to do good human stories in a Godzilla film. I don't know, this is one of those things where, I feel like that they could have really done it if they gotten past the lower undergrowth and actually gotten to the roots.
That's interesting, because there was almost that element where they had the Muto like spore or whatever they called it before it had completely like hatched, and they said, well, why didn't you destroy it before it was full grown? And they said that, hey, this thing eats radiation or whatever it eats, really, and if we kill it, that would probably spread and kill a lot of people. And they sort of just said that as like a throwaway defense of why it took 15 years or whatever. But it kind of harkens back to that without actually going anywhere, which is the unfortunate part. Because once they've said that, they never bring it up again. Okay, so, we absolutely have to kill these monsters now, and we're going to do it in populated areas, but that fear of the radiation spreading and infecting people is no longer an element for some reason.
Brian, anything to add?
Oh, no, that was a good point. I thought I was on mute. No, that's a very good point. And that was sort of the weakness of the film and the weakness of the script. But for me, kind of going back, is that I actually sort of enjoyed, I thought, the slow burn, though, of some of the script, at least in terms of with Godzilla and our sort of final reveal, and then our final sort of get to the final big fight towards the end. I thought that was the strength. Like, while the humans are the weakness, I thought the anticipation of finally seeing what these creatures can do was a huge strength about the film, because they teased us. They teased us through the whole film of Godzilla versus these things, or just Godzilla showing up. And every time they were like, all right, here comes a big monster fight. All right, over here now. You're like, oh, here comes a big monster over here now. Oh, like to the point where it was almost frustrating. But I was like, obviously they're saving something, and I want to see it. Now I've been teased enough. Let me see it. And then finally in the script, it was they fight, and you're like, this almost makes it worthwhile. Like to me, it made it worthwhile. Maybe this, you guys not so much. But when they finally just let the chains loose in San Francisco, I was like, this is exactly what I was hoping for. Now a lot of people I know a lot of contention to that was they didn't want a slow burn. They wanted Godzilla, and they wanted Godzilla quickly. But I feel like if we got Godzilla really fast, or it came up too fast, where there was a lot of film left over, you're going to get bored. Like, a good example would be the second Transformers movie, where Optimus Prime had that amazing fight in the forest against the Decepticons. I was like, this is great. This is really climactic. And then the fight ended, and then you realize there's still like an hour and 30 minutes left of the film.
Can I point out how fucked up it is that we're using Transformers 2 as a favorable comparison to this film?
No, it's an unfavorable comparison because that's how rushing things to the climax hurts the rest of the film, where this one didn't rush itself, and when it got to what I thought was the climax, it was enjoyable and I guess a good enjoyable and a word I can't think of at the moment.
Fun.
Worthwhile.
Back work.
Well, see, my problem with the slow burn and the setup, I didn't have a problem with that in theory because I thought, oh, this is great. We can have build up to Godzilla, but the problem is the build up wasn't for Godzilla. It was for the Mutos, and Godzilla just kind of appears. And
Godzilla always kind of appears, though.
Well, yeah, but just because it's been done before doesn't mean that it has to be done again. All this...
but then if it doesn't have to be done again, why would you try to make this like the very first film?
Quit dancing around me! I felt like, I felt like this was an opportunity to kind of just do the slow burn, build up anticipation before we finally see Godzilla. But the problem is all the setup wasn't for Godzilla. It was for the Mutos. Godzilla got no setup except for that 2-minute dialogue where Ken Watanabe said, here's my home movie of shooting a bomb off in the Pacific trying to kill Godzilla, and all you see are his spines.
Well, no, because the build-up is the showing him swimming, and they talk about him, and then they show, and they know he's there, and you're waiting to see. The build-up is waiting for the full body shot of Godzilla.
Which I had problems with as well, but that's, again, another gripe for another part of the show.
I thought the build-up was more to the actual monster fight themselves, because that's, even though that seems like a very juvenile thing, that's what a lot of people went in this to see, is the Godzilla fight something, or Godzilla destroys something, usually another monster. So that's when I was saying build-up and slow burn, because that's what we were waiting for. We already kind of knew what Godzilla looked like, because unfortunately the teaser trailers and trailers sort of gave it away. So the anticipation then was turned to, what is he going to do? What are they going to do? How, and what's going to happen? That's where I'm sort of leading off into and waiting for to see. And I know my theater was the exact same way. I actually heard a guy, I think a couple of rows ahead of me, during one of the teaser shots was like, oh, come on. And we're like, wait for it. And then once the fight happened, he was like the first guy cheering, so...
Now I do have to be I do have to be fair. There were parts of the film that I thoroughly enjoyed and thought were really badass moments. One of them being the scene at the Golden Gate Bridge, where Godzilla basically fucks everything up just by getting up to his feet, and then. Like, I was watching this, like, you see it, like, he gets up, and then one of the ships just randomly starts firing, and then I guess everybody else is watching, like, oh, man, Charlie's shooting off, guess better we start shooting, too. And then it's just like, okay, dudes, I'm just getting up on my feet here, and, like, I don't know, it was just, I would like to have seen more stuff like that, where Godzilla is actually the direct cause of the destruction, and not, like, causing damage, like, peripherally through a fight with a third party. And then, of course, I think we can all agree that the scene where the camera's focused on his tail and his spine start lighting up to signify the forthcoming fire blast was awesome as fuck.
When he does that fire blast, like anytime he does that, it was amazing.
Yeah, that was one of the bigger my theater exploding sort of moments, and because it was a perfect because that was something I liked. They didn't show that in the trailer. They didn't even tease that in the trailer.
I'm not gonna lie. I actually forgot that he could do that before I went into this film. So I see the spine start lighting up. I was like, oh, that's right. He can do that, can't he?
Yeah, it was, and it was good. It was because it was 1, 2, 3, the back. Everyone in the theater's like, ah. Of course, and then afterwards we're all like, yeah, woo. And I kind of sat down and was like, hey, how come you didn't lead with that? That is your primary weapon, sir.
Because it's a finishing move. It's a finishing move. You've got to do it last.
And then there's the force feeding when he killed the last Muto, which I thought was amazing.
That was insane. Like when he grabbed the jaws, I thought for a while, I was like, oh, he's going to do I'm going to break his jaw and snap its neck and it's going to die. And then he, backs his neck up and then fire breaths. Everyone in the theater's like, oh.
If Godzilla could have spoken at that moment, which was done before and will never be done again because it was awful, he'd have been shouting choke on it.
No, I think it was been like, eat shit, and then blew the fire breath.
Oh. So
this has been my annoying monster battle today. Just fucking die.
Of course, I watched that and I kept going, it's a Night Fury! Like, I was totally in the How to Train Your Dragons mode.
You see, Brian, I told you!
I'm sorry, I forgot, okay?
I actually made that comparison to Brian before we started recording the show. I made that exact same comparison to How to Train Your Dragon. Okay. All right. Well, I don't know. Just I don't know. We'll get into my next gripes deal with individual characters, which I guess is how we will segue into talking about the cast of this film. So, such as it was. So, Kat, why don't you get us started? What were your thoughts on the casting of this film?
Well, it goes without saying that one of the primary complaints that you get is that every single one of the trailers heavily featured Bryan Cranston, and then, spoiler alert, killed him because he's not really the main character, but they sort of bill him in the previews as the main character to get people to come watch it because he's super popular right now. So I kind of knew that was probably going to happen so that you can develop the character of the son more. But there was just so many really just weak characters in this, to the point where I'm going, okay, I'm for the monsters winning because I can't empathize with any of you.
Yeah, Bryan Cranston's character was really the only one that I felt had a character at all that was developed in any way, shape, or form. And I was really bummed to see him die in the film. And I'll tell you, I said it earlier in the show, and I'll say it again. Ken Watanabe got screwed in this film because, like, he's the only other character that I actually came close to liking, and it wasn't because he was, badly written or badly acted, but it's because just when I'm starting to get into the groove and get into his character, I get yanked away and I have to go follow Boring McBoringface.
Yeah, I called Ken Watanabe. It's like his character should have been just Dr. Man, I've seen some shit. Because
Dr. Man, I've seen some shit.
Yeah, like because that's one of the big things I sort of got from every sort of scene he was in, and because he wasn't excited to see Godzilla. He was more like, "Fuck, again," and then the Muto escapes. Fuck, again.
Like
there's a second Muto. Fuck. Like that's his character.
There was so much more that they could have done with him. Like the most brilliant moment for Watanabe for me in this movie, aside from the one that we talked about earlier when he gave the whole folly of man speech, is when he's talking with the Navy admiral and he hands him a watch and the guy goes, "It stopped," and he says, "Yes, at 8:45." And he drops the Hiroshima date, and I'm just like, oh yes, finally, are we gonna get some of the human drama here that I've been wanting? And then I get yanked away to go follow Ford Brody, and I'm like, no, go back to the wise Japanese man. Like I said, I feel like the only reason they put him into this movie was so that he could be wise and Japanese. But Kat, you're about to say something?
I was going to say that Ken Watanabe was one of the few characters that I did legitimately like. I just thought his character was it was very strangely written, because he starts off as this sort of like brilliant scientist who knows shit that nobody else knows, and they call him in for all this shit that's way over everyone else's heads. And by the end, he's just, you feel like maybe he's kind of insane, because he has this belief that Godzilla is like there to save them, in not quite in those words, but he's there to restore balance, and that basically he has all this knowledge that it doesn't make sense that he would think that. And so I thought the writing of his character was kind of erratic. Like, they started to blur Bryan Cranston's character, like, insanity into Ken Watanabe. Because what would make him think that Godzilla would help them, or, you know, like, that he was there to quote-unquote restore balance? And that's part of, like, they didn't really explain Godzilla very well. They just said, hey, Godzilla, this is an alpha predator. It's going to, you know, fight other predators. Like, that's not a good enough explanation of why they're gonna fight. But I guess it's all we really needed, because that's what we wanted to see.
Well, and something else, if you start thinking about that belief logically, you know, okay, yeah, he's an alpha predator. He's killed off the other Mutos. Okay, and then what? Have you seen the boy? He's got to eat. What do you think he's going to do now?
Well, they mentioned it in the past comings that apparently, like, he just feeds off of radiation. Like, all these monsters sort of feed off of radiation. And, which is interesting, because the Mutos almost are a good creature in a sense, because they can get rid of radiation fallout by eating it. And maybe also so could Godzilla, because there's that sort of small explanation where, like, the reason you haven't seen these guys around is because they all sort of went to the depths of the ocean that we don't really explore, and they're feeding off the Earth itself, and so they don't really go hungry or anything like that. So once the Mutos were gone, yeah, there's nothing really Godzilla could do anymore. He's like, I've done what I woke up to do. Now it's time to go back to bed. Later.
And see that.
We'll get to Godzilla's character, because I still want to talk about the fucking soldier that keeps somehow magically escaping these death traps.
What character? He had no character. He was simply there.
Are you sure? I think he's a magician, because he somehow was able to magically move a boat so far away that bomb didn't take out San Francisco, and then still got saved. Like, he was a Houdini. That's what his character. His character was, I get into shit and somehow survive. Not necessarily a good character, but that's his character.
Did you guys ever watch World War Z?
No, because I am morally opposed to that film, because I have read the book, and I realize that the movie is a travesty against all things that Max Brooks stands for.
Okay, well, this is like the giant monster movie equivalent of World War Z. Because the World War Z, the best description I've heard of that movie was Brad Pitt surviving increasingly improbable circumstances. And this is that. This Godzilla, this character, Ford Brody, whatever his name is.
Boring McLuckyface.
Boring McLuckyface. Like, that's all it is like him for some reason, you know, being the exact person that he's needed to be. They need somebody who can potentially defuse a bomb. Oh, how convenient. I can defuse bombs. I'll give them that. Every movie does shit like that. But for everywhere that he goes, disaster follows. Anybody who meets his eyes is going to die, except his immediate family for some reason. Like,
and even then, as Bryan Cranston proves, that's no guarantee.
Right. Well, Bryan Cranston is the older, wise father figure who needs to die to give the character motivation, even though it's not his character motivation at all. So it's like, it's just so like, you draw the line. You're like, that your believability could work to some extent, and then you cross that line.
You know who I think the film really should have followed? I think the film should have followed the wife, the doctor wife, who's actually there in the middle of this whole shit as it's going down. You know, that's, I think, because, you know, we see some hints of some legit real world fears here, like the parents who were separated from their child in the midst of the attack. You know, I think that I'm not going to say it. No, I made Brian promise that I wouldn't say it. But I really wanted to see the terror that someone in that position of being in the middle of a Godzilla attack would be in. And instead, we're all following the military peoples who are, trained, if not for this specific crisis, but are trained to cope with crises in general. That doesn't elicit sympathy from me. It doesn't elicit empathy from me. I want to see characters who are afraid, who are scared, who are terrified. And you could see it in the woman's eyes when she appeared in the stadium at the end. She had seen some shit. I want to know what she's seen. I want to follow her story. God knows it's more interesting than this guy's.
Well, my problem with that character is that she has no purpose. She serves no purpose in this movie at all. Her sole function in this movie is to create a reason for generic McLucky Man to continue. Like, it's to give him motivation. That's it. It's to conveniently get him from place to place. Oh, I have to go to Hawaii on my layover to get back to my family. Well, now I have to get back to San Francisco for my family. The entire world is at stake here. Billions of lives hanging in the balance. I don't see why his family has to be in mortal danger at all times for him to be motivated to do the right thing. Like, every time they bring her back onto screen and like, oh no, something's happening and it's bad, and oh no, my son's in danger and I'm in danger and I'm having this building fall on me. I'm just like, stop it. You haven't done enough with this character for me to empathize with them at all. And they serve no legitimate purpose in this film. Maybe that's just me.
No, because that's the exact way they explained that character was a goal, I guess a goal object. It's like, I have to get home to them. Exactly. That's what they were there for. You don't really need that because it doesn't. I agree that she serves real. If that's her only purpose, it's real no purpose because that means whenever she's sort of there, she just, hi, I'm here still. All right, back to whatever's going on over there. You sort of get introduced to her, and you can sort of say well, this is how McLucky Boring Face sort of coped with his father going nuts and his mother. She represents him moving on, which would be okay if they sort of spread that out a little bit. But
it'd be okay if he had.
She stands there going, I'm either going to die or something bad's going to happen. Over to you.
But the thing that was like, I can't take this character anymore was when they were evacuating, and they were like, hey, come on, let's go. Do you want me to take your kid with me? Because I'm getting out of here. And she was like, no, that's okay. My husband's coming. And I'm like, no, you imbecile.
Well, in fairness, at least as far as the kid is concerned, she came to her senses pretty quickly. And that was where I started to see sort of the germ of where, okay, this movie would be so much better if this was the character we were following. Because, here's a character who has a child that she has to care for and protect, but she's in the middle of this situation that she has no idea how to cope with and how to deal with. It's something that is so far beyond her control, and I felt like there was an opportunity that was missed very sorely to explore, like I said, the real human fear and emotion that someone in that situation would feel. Being in a situation that is so completely out of control that you're praying to God that you just had some bad chili before you went to bed and this is all just a nightmare. And like I said, I feel like that this is a story that would have been far superior to follow than Boring McLucky Pants.
The problem being we couldn't follow her without Boring McLucky Pants in the picture.
See, I disagree. I feel like that if we had removed Boring McLucky Pants entirely, nothing of value would have been lost. Because he had no character.
He was just so generic. And you know what? And somebody told me this.
If he was any more generic, he'd have been played by not Nathan Fillion. Who's the guy who's the voice actor who did Drake? Oh God, what was his name? Fuck. I had a joke in there, but then I lost it. Edit!
Anyway. Somebody told me something before I went to see the movie, and I couldn't help but notice it the whole time. And they said, so this main character guy is really big and buff, and he's an army guy, and he has, like, a really high voice.
I'm sorry, were we watching the same film? I didn't see
No,
big and buff at all.
Well, I mean, he's bigger and buffer than you or me. So he's this military guy who's got some muscle on him, but he sounds like a teenager who just finished puberty and is still, like, not fully developed, like, vocal cords or anything. Like, he sounded like he was 16, and his face looked like he was maybe 18, but we're expected to believe that he and his wife, who also looks 16, are fully functioning adults.
Well, Brian has a bit of information about that particular actor that might explain that he revealed to me before the show.
Yeah, Ford Brody is played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who also played Kick-Ass.
Uh-huh.
Who's a fucking teenager.
Who's a teenager. So I don't know, maybe that's his voice? But yeah, he looks completely different because he's not skinny anymore, that's for sure. So there was a huge growth spurt because he's usually I thought he was pretty short and Kick-Ass, and now he's like 6'7". So maybe he had platforms, I don't know. So yeah, I think I didn't. Truth be told, I don't even remember him having a high voice, but maybe because I just don't really remember him too much. Other than, how did you get out of this one? Like, how did you get out of that jam? God damn it!
If you rewatch it, just listen to him talk, because there's times where you're just like, he doesn't really fit the bill of this military guy who's supposed to be tough as shit, because he like, his voice cracks at least once, and I'm like, what the fuck?
I swear on Holy Bible, I swear that at one point he did the Sweetie Belle squeak.
Truth be told, if I saw Godzilla, I probably would make the same sound. There's Godzilla. Where?
So, but like, I mean, to sum up my thoughts on the on the casting and the script at once, follow Ken Watanabe, follow the wife. You would have had a much better story.
See, I just couldn't get around the wife, and part of it I think is because she is like 90% of the time accompanied by the kid. And at least 3 times in this movie, they want you to, like, empathize for this child. And it's not just, oh, their kid, I get it. Their kid is the motivation for our main protagonist to get back home. But then there was the little girl on the beach in Hawaii, and then there was the little Japanese kid in the airport. And it's like 3 times they put a child's life in danger to make you feel that there's a sense of danger. Can we talk for a minute about the dog?
Oh, the dog running away? Yeah.
That, they're like, oh, there's this dog. Oh, no, there's water coming. He's going to drown. He's tethered to something. Oh, he escapes. And then they never show any resolution with that.
I completely missed the dog.
What the fuck? It was like the tsunami that came in, and I guess that was in Hawaii as, or no, wherever that was.
That was Hawaii. Yeah, that was Hawaii. Was
it? Okay. Yeah. Tsunami coming in as, I guess, Godzilla comes out of the water or something like that. And, there's just a point where there's a dog on a leash and it's tethered to a pole or something, and the water's coming in and you're like, oh no, poor dog. And then the dog somehow, magically, by some fucking magic, breaks free and starts running down the street along with all the people. And within seconds, those people, even though they're not showing the dog at this point because it's lost in the crowd, all of those people are drowned. Because there's no way they could have escaped all that water. So they basically just made you sympathize for this poor dog, gave you hope, and then never resolved it. And again, it's that whole, they're creating a sense of danger that isn't necessary, because the whole situation of a tsunami coming into a populated area is already pretty overwhelmingly, panic. You don't need to create that extra individual layer, and they keep doing that. They kept doing, they did it with the 3 different children. 3 different children. I feel like most movies should have, unless like a kid is one of the main characters, you shouldn't have that many kids in there that aren't serving any real purpose. Ah.
Well, all right then. I think that's our signal to move on.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into the real big player in this film, and that's the visual effects and monster design. And we'll save Godzilla for last since he's the big cheese. But what did you guys think of the effects in this movie?
The effects,
very excellent.
Yeah, especially since like the last half of the film is basically 90% effects. But nothing seemed out of place to me. Everything seemed sort of correct, if that makes any real sense, you know. So yeah, I'll tell you this. Did you guys hear the story of like when we got the Godzilla design, and I believe people in Japan started making fun of him because he came over to America and got fat? I know a lot of people are like, no, defense, guys. No, give it to Japan. That was a good joke. That was a good joke. We can't say anything about that.
No, see, that was one of the few things I liked about the film was Godzilla's design. But again, that we're saving Godzilla for last. So
yeah,
but the Mutos, what did you guys think of them? Which, by the way, can I just say how stupid a name that is, Muto?
Well, it's just an acronym.
Especially when you say it like Muto and not Muto, like they actually pronounce it in the in the movie. Muto kind of sounds like a Japanese word to me, so it doesn't come off as that strange. But when you say Muto, like you're doing,
well, Muto is actually last name of a Japanese wrestler that I know, so it is a Japanese thing. Anyway, I guess to think about them is because they are brand new, so they're brand new monsters. And we're not really sure what they are, like, because one has wings, one doesn't, one's huge, one's kind of small. Like, they're shapes. Like, that's the best way I sort of describe them. They're shapes. They have enough shapes to look like something, but you're not really sure what they are. Like, they're not bugs, they're not birds, they're not lizards. They're something.
They're vaguely monstrous.
Yeah, they're vaguely monstrous.
See,
one has one's the female going, I'm going to make a million more of me, and we're all like, I'm not sure if I like that.
See, I kept getting a Starship Troopers vibe from the Mutos, especially when you look at their faces. They look like the bugs from Starship Troopers.
No, because then the bugs of Starship Troopers, they had jaws, didn't they?
Yeah, and the jaws look just like the faces of the Mutos.
I'm not seeing it. Man, maybe that's just me though.
Look at a picture. Look at a picture of the bug from Starship Troopers, and then look at just the face area of the Muto.
All right. Well, then continue as I look these up.
Yeah. Just tell me that there isn't a similarity in structure there. But I don't know. I really felt like the Mutos were very, the Starship Troopers similarity aside, were just very generic. I felt like it was, you know what they look like to me? They look like stink bugs. I felt like they were giant stink bugs, and that if you smooshed one, it would smell like fart for the next 100 years.
To me, it looked like one of the monsters that was in Pacific Rim, like the one that could fly. So the flying Muto kind of looked like that to me. I just kept thinking, it came from the breach. Like, it was vaguely Pacific Rim-y to me. It's
kind of funny that you mentioned that, because Guillermo del Toro, I think, has already gone on record as saying that he would love to film a Godzilla and Pacific Rim crossover.
Oh, that would actually be amazing.
Of course he would. Of course he would.
Which I'll tell you what, if you made Godzilla the villain in that film as he was in the OG film, I would spill the blood of a dozen men to see that.
Well, I pulled up the two pictures and I'm looking at it, and I can see sort of the shape, but I still don't see what you're seeing, because the Starship Trooper bugs, their jaws are much bigger. And this one is sort of like the solid one piece. So, again, it's just maybe it's you, maybe it's me, who knows?
Maybe. All right, but now let's talk about the big cheese himself. Let's talk about Godzilla. And Brian, why don't you get started on this, since my list of grievances is long.
Oh, Jiminy Christmas. Okay. I mean, are we just going to talk about everything Godzilla at this point?
The design, how he moved, how he fought, just in general thoughts on the creature himself.
I think the design is great because the design itself was a little bit different, but also just similar enough. We know what we're looking at. We know who we're looking at. There is no mistake. Like, if I took a picture of that and just, showed it up, and be like before the film came out, or like, what does this look like? People are like, well, that looks kind of like Godzilla. I'm like, there we go. That to me seems like an excellent way of looking at it. It wasn't a complete changeover like the 1998 film where he was more lizard than anything else. You had the spines, you had his face, you had the jaws, you had everything sort of going for him. And like I mentioned before, he is a little fatter, but that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah, the design of Godzilla is one of the things I unabashedly loved, is the design for Godzilla in this film. I thought it captured all the elements of the classic man in suit years, while fixing a lot of the major problems, like the fact that the tail just kind of ended in that kind of bulbous round bit at the end. This tail actually had a proper point at the end of it, and it actually I felt like Godzilla actually moved like a creature that size would in real life. The only problem that I had with Godzilla in this film, with the creature itself, aside from his motivations and all that, with the design itself, was he didn't feel big to me. And I think the thing that really killed that for me is the first shot that we get, that's the full reveal of Godzilla. He kind of steps into the camera, we see his foot come down, and then the camera slides straight up to give us a pan shot of the creature, and then it brings us right to Godzilla's eye level, which I think subconsciously made me feel like that size-wise me and Godzilla were on equal footing, and that kind of killed the bigness of Godzilla to me. And from that point on, just Godzilla didn't feel big. He didn't have the same majesty and hugeness that he did. Again, going back to the original 1954 film, I don't know. Am I the only one who noticed that? Kat, did you have noticed anything along those lines?
No, he felt pretty gigantic to me.
Well, maybe it's just me. So,
well, it's so weird that you bring that up, because I think we were talking earlier, is that because the way Godzilla films were in the past, very sort of one camera, I always kind of realize he's sort of big. Even in like this Man in Suit days, he's always sort of big. My only sort of complaint was that because they were filming a lot of things in San Francisco. San Francisco doesn't have a lot of huge skyscrapers, so you might not get the bigness out of him as you might think, because this is actually the largest Godzilla to date. Because the first Godzilla wasn't as huge as this Godzilla is. But sometimes you may not get that because San Francisco is not like New York. You can't get a good size comparison there. But yeah, I think it might just be, you're the only one that I know for to this day has said Godzilla to me didn't feel big. So it might just be you.
I don't know where you're saying that there weren't a lot of skyscrapers. I remember a shit ton of tall buildings in that city.
But it's not a whole city of just that like New York is.
Exactly. That's sort of what I mean. There's a lot of open space, and even more open space at the end of the film.
So, but I will say, like, the fight choreography I thought was really cool. Like I said, all the creatures did move with the weight that I feel like they would in real life, and
it looked exhausting.
Yeah. And I once again, the final execution, the force feeding was brilliant, and I feel like that there should have been a lot more stuff like that.
I really felt like with the design of Godzilla itself that I thought it was really good, because obviously Godzilla has always been vaguely lizardy, kind of dinosaur-y. And when you sometimes, some interpretations might be too dinosaur-y, or too man in suit-y. And I felt like this was actually really good. Like very true to the original, but you can kind of see that they tried to put some physics or a little bit of biology into it for, you know, a made-up creature, because you could see, like, it may have been, like, a little fatter, but I felt like, hey, this is a really, really tough creature. It needs all of that extra bulk, because it's so bottom-heavy. So it has, like, these really massively powerful arms, and it did a lot of fighting, you know, with its jaw and everything. I thought, like, it was like freaking choking one of them, and I'm like, that's amazing.
Am I the only one who noticed a little bit of bear in Godzilla's design this time around, especially like in and around the face when he roars?
It was maybe a little mammal-ish.
Yeah. Like, and how he stands and how he moves, like, and how his face contorts itself when he roars. It looked kind of a little bearish to me. I don't know. That might just be me though.
Possibly. I mean, I'm looking at some of the pictures. I could probably see that definitely. And he did have sort of bear swat. I'm going to push. I'm going to grab. I'm going to claw. And then I'm going to bite you. And then I'm going to light you on fire. Sort of thing for it.
I don't know what bears you have that light you on fire.
Well, you need to go to Alaska, because I'm telling you, those bears up there, they don't fuck around.
Man, if there were bears from Australia, they would definitely do that.
Or go to Canada, where they have dire bears. They're like regular bears, but dire.
Dire.
God bless you, South Park. But I think that's one of the things that this movie got right, and that's the one thing about this movie that I will raise my sword and defend to my dying breath, is this design for Godzilla is the best I've ever seen, and I would love to see more done with it. Which I guess is one of the things that disappointed me about this movie, is that we didn't really get a whole lot of face time with Godzilla.
Well, see, that to me is just the setup for the sequel. You know, like them, you know, doing the slow burn, waiting a while to show you Godzilla is just, you know, making you salivate for the sequel when you know you're going to see him fight something else, and you know they're not going to beat around the bush next time.
It could be a little bit of that. And I'll go on and say that not only do I think this Godzilla looks great, and I know a lot of people may hate me for this, I do like the fact they kept the more middle of the road personality-wise with Godzilla. You know, not the original movie, but the little bit later ons, because he was there to sort of do the one thing he wanted to do. I'm going to kill those monsters. And he doesn't care about humans. Like, no, you're just sort of in the way. I like that about Godzilla. Godzilla really shouldn't care about humans. We're sort of an annoyance to him. Like, every time we sort of shot at him, I felt like if he could talk or had thought bubbles, he's like, seriously, whatever, and just walk past them.
You know,
it's like a couple of times where you were like, oh, he's rolling his eyes. You can't tell, but he's rolling his eyes.
There was this one brilliant shot, though, that I wish I could find, because I want to make it my desktop background, is, I think in terms of just cinematography, this was just a beautiful scene, was after he sort of he clobbered one of the Mutos, and then the building fell. Then the building fell on him, too, so he sort of fell and caught himself, and then you see the dust, and you see his face, he turns and he looks, and that's where Boring McLucky Pants was. And they're looking at each other for like that split second. Like, in that split second, like, that was a beautiful scene. I want that as my desktop background. I cannot find that picture anywhere.
Yeah, well, wait till it comes out on DVD, and then you can just take a screenshot. See, I didn't like the personality that Godzilla had in this film, because I was expecting, again, this goes back to my expectations. I was expecting OG Godzilla, 1954, when he was a force of nature, a wild, unthinking animal. And then you get to the ending shot of the film where he wakes up and he just kind of trots off. Like, I could not have been more disappointed by that ending unless Godzilla had actually gone, okay, that's it. Yep, I'm done here. Sorry for wrecking your shit. I'm out though. I'm outies. I'm gonna go take a nap.
I'll totally pay for that.
Yeah, he wouldn't apologize.
I'm gonna go take a nap. You guys have fun. You know, don't worry about what happens the next time I get hungry and like come after you.
See, there would have been a more disappointing ending, which would have been if Godzilla had actually died.
Oh, yeah. Like, this was his final battle.
Yeah, because they made it look like they were gonna kill him until he gets up right at the end, and I was like, "Oh, don't you fucking die! Don't you dare fucking die!" I was so pissed off at the movie for like 5 minutes, and then he got up. I'm like, "Oh, thank God! Now I won't walk out of here totally pissed."
He just needed a nap.
Okay.
He did need a nap.
Needed a little bit. It was a really tough fight. He needed a nap, collect all of his energy, and then go on with the rest of his day.
Now I'll tell you something else, and this is going back to the Mutos a bit, but there's something about movies in general that I'm getting really fucking sick of, and that's every time something big is on the screen, they have to have this low growl at all times, just to emphasize how big something is, and I'm getting really fucking tired of that. Like, I don't know. Like, are you trying to tell me that this, every time you saw the Mutos on the screen, there's always this sound going off, and like, are you trying to tell me that this thing is big or that it has gas?
I didn't really pick up on that.
It did eat a lot of radiation.
Man, can you imagine the gas after that? I didn't really pick up on. I thought that the animals, the Muto, had a lot of noise to them, which I thought was kind of I thought it was pretty good because these are young, very horny creatures who are hanging out with other creatures like them for the first time ever. I would expect something like that to be making lots of noises, and I thought that the noises, whatever kind of noises you want to call that, were all very interesting and kind of, different. It wasn't just like a big roar or growl or anything. They made like clicks and whistles or something. They had different kinds of noises, which I thought was interesting. And as long as we're talking about the Muto again, I'd just like to point out that I felt more sympathy for the Muto than I did for most of the characters. And I thought that
all they wanted was a family, and Godzilla was like, "Oh, fuck that!"
All they wanted was to get their dicks wet and start a family, and Godzilla had to come along and ruin it because apparently
Godzilla's
he's
I don't want 9,000 of you people around. Okay, you're gonna bother my naps, so I'm gonna have to kill you.
And I thought it was part of and this goes way back to the scripting, which I forgot about when we were talking about this, but it's like the movie couldn't decide who you should root for, because it didn't make sense to me that they instilled some sort of sympathy in the audience for the Muto when the Muto were obviously the ones that Godzilla was going to totally wreck. Like when the female Muto saw that all of her babies had been set ablaze, and it screams and it's upset, and you're like, oh man, I feel sorry for this thing. It just lost its sole purpose in life. Like, fuck. Like, how would I feel in that situation? My whole little hive of little soon-to-be monster babies set on fire. And that was sort of that was a little upsetting, for somebody who can sympathize with monsters. And you sort of feel sorry for it. But you were rooting for Godzilla because his name is in the title. But then you're rooting for the humans because by default you kind of want your own species to win. And it just felt kind of weird. Like, the movie couldn't make up its mind if you should want the Muto to live or not.
If the Muto lived, because you are sort of rooting for the humans, if they lived and they had their family, the human race is dead at that point. Because they obviously can't stop it. It's going to feed off any sort of radiation, and it goes destroying whatever city is around it to get to it. So yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, it sucks that your family's dead, but you were also going to probably kill all of us if that came to fruition. So yeah, it is sort of like, yay humans, kind of.
Yeah, it just would have made more sense, for simplicity's sake, to just make Muto, bad. But then I think it just sort of shows off how animalistic they are. Just to, here's a species that lives to breed like every other species on this planet.
They're like cicadas. Cicadas, they burrow down for years, come out, breed. There's 1 billion of them, but then most of them die. Like, it just seems like that's their only purpose, is to breed, and that's sort of it.
Yep.
Pretty much.
All right. Okay. Well, we've pretty much gone at length about Godzilla. So let's sum up our final thoughts on the film. So, Kat, why don't you get started?
It's a good popcorn film. It's got good action. It's got really fantastic special effects. The story is weak and the characters are weaker. But if you're just there for the special effects, like most people probably were, then it's not too shabby.
Okay, Brian?
I mean, like I said, I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to enjoy it. I thought I wasn't actually going to enjoy it. Yeah, the story's weak. The humans kind of suck, but at the same time, it almost seems tradition in sort of Godzilla films, especially when you see some really terrible ones like Godzilla's Revenge or Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. But you know, I still had a good time. I made it have a better time because I was with other real big fans and enthusiasts, and we sort of took over the theater with our enthusiasm. So, but I still enjoyed it overall.
See, I don't know. I felt the film was very weak. I felt like that I felt like there was a germ of a good idea at its core, but that it was, the shot was very wide off the mark. Felt like the film just in general was very weak, and I don't know. I was really disappointed with it. So anyway, this is the part of the show now where we give our final ratings on the film. As always, our ratings go from best to worst. See it now, wait for the matinee, wait for DVD, wait for rental, wait for cable, don't even bother, and Brian's rating, fuck this movie. So, Brian, why don't you give your rating first?
I still giggle that I have a rating. Anyway, this is a matinee. This is a matinee film. Like I said, I enjoyed it, but it's sort of things like, hey, you got some time, early afternoon, go see Godzilla. You don't have to rush out, but go see it. Matinee.
Okay, Kat, what about you?
I was gonna agree. Go see the matinee. It's honestly, it's a decent movie, but it's not enough to pay the full price like we all did.
Yeah, well, I'm not even that generous. I'm gonna say wait for rental. This is a rental film. This is catch it when it's on Redbox or when it's on demand. But I mean, it's worth seeing once. But as kind of a just kind of, hey, I'm out grocery shopping. Oh, Redbox has Godzilla. Put my $1 in and bring it back the next day. But it's definitely not something worth spending $11 to go see. So I'm gonna say wait for rental on this one. So, yeah, looks like I'm the odd man out on that one. All right, but that's all the time that we have for Nerd of the Third Power this week. Come back next week when we wish Batman a happy 75th anniversary. And we look back on the Caped Crusader's history, on some of his highs, his lows, his creamy middles. And then the week after that, Cabo comes back and joins us to talk about the life and times of Scrooge McDuck, both the classic Don Rosa graphic novel and the recent heavy metal concept album that came out back in April by the lead singer of, not the lead singer, the band leader of Nightwish. So yeah, going to be a lot of fun for the next couple of weeks. So, but that's all the time we have for this week for Nerd of the Third Power. Thank you as always for tuning in. Thank you as always. I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm the Cat.
I'm Brian.
All right, and we will see you next week. Taka, play us out.